Deep inside the cold metal corridors of Xerif 9, a space prison orbiting a dead moon, silence ruled like a cruel king. The cells, lined in steel and humming with force fields, held criminals from every corner of the galaxy. But one cell, hidden near the core of the station, held someone different: Varelia Sakor, daughter of a high diplomat from the Threxian Union. With skin that shimmered faint blue and eyes like liquid silver, she had grown up in palaces of crystal and light, not places like this, where shadows crawled and hope died quietly. She sat still on a cold bench, arms crossed, face calm but eyes alert. She had memorized every bolt on the wall, every flicker of the broken ceiling light. She had been trained in diplomacy, politics, and grace, but nothing had prepared her for this. Across from her, in the dark half of the shared cell, sat a man unlike any she had ever known. A human. Dirty, unshaved, muscles worn from labor, eyes sharp like cracked glass. He had been there before she arrived. He barely spoke, just stared, sometimes fixedly at the wall, sometimes at her. His name, she'd learned from a passing guard, was Reed Carter. The Threxians considered humans a primitive species, stubborn, emotional, violent. Reed looked the part. His uniform was torn, his knuckles scarred, and there was always a tense energy around him, like a storm about to burst. Varelia had tried not to speak to him. What would she even say? They were worlds apart. She didn't even know how he ended up here. Rumor said he was captured after causing an entire mining colony's systems to overload, damaging a Threxian patrol ship in the process. She thought of it as savage foolishness, throwing himself against a machine far larger than him. But there was something different about him, too. His silence wasn't dull. It felt sharp, calculated. She kept her distance. One day passed, maybe two. Time inside Xerif 9 had no shape. The only signs of the outer world were the humming of engines and the flickering glow of distant stars through the energy grid. Then, without warning, everything changed. Alarms screamed suddenly, slicing through the silence. Red lights bathed the walls. The force fields that held the prisoners blinked and then vanished. Somewhere far off, a loud blast echoed through the station. Varelia jumped to her feet, heart racing. She looked across the cell. Reed was already moving, not panicked, focused. "They've lost control," he muttered, more to himself than to her. Then his eyes met hers, sharp and cold. "If you stay here, you die." Before she could reply, he was out the door. For a second, she stood frozen. She was not used to making choices without instruction. Her guards were gone. Her comlink was long destroyed. No one was coming for her. She followed. Outside the cell block, chaos reigned. Smoke filled the air. Prisoners ran wild, some fighting, others fleeing. A massive alien with 4 arms crushed a droid's head underfoot. Sparks flew. Screams echoed. Reed moved like he had lived through this before, ducking behind barriers, grabbing broken pipes, and jamming them into control panels. Doors opened where they shouldn't. Lights cut out behind them. He waited for her to catch up when she lagged behind, but never said a word. Varelia stumbled more than once. Her dress was made for comfort, not escape. Down a long hallway, they found a blast door partially open. "We need to get to the lower decks," Reed said. "That's where they dock the maintenance pods. Might be a way out." She wanted to ask how he knew, but he was already pulling wires from a panel. His fingers worked quickly, confidently, sparking the circuit until the door slid open. Inside, more prisoners roamed, but Reed glared them down. Even with no weapon, there was something in his stance that made others hesitate. A pair of guards, still loyal to the system, appeared at the far end with plasma rifles. One raised his gun. Without thinking, Varelia screamed. But Reed didn't run. Instead, he grabbed a metal tray from the ground, flung it into the overhead sprinkler sensor, and dropped flat. The fire system burst into life, spraying mist and steam across the corridor. The guards' visors fogged instantly. In the blur, Reed slammed into one, disarming him with brutal efficiency. Varelia had never seen combat like that: quick, ugly, effective. He didn't kill, but he made sure they wouldn't follow. They moved through maintenance tunnels now, tight and rusted, where light flickered and the scent of oil hung thick. "You're not what I expected," Varelia said quietly. Reed glanced at her, breathing hard. "What'd you expect? A caveman?" She didn't answer. Instead, she watched as he pulled open a vent, motioning for her to crawl through first. "You don't owe me anything," she said. "I'm not part of your war." "No," he said, "but you're not a slaver either. And someone's going to come for you. Maybe they'll listen if you're alive." There was a strange bitterness in his voice. Varelia realized he wasn't doing this for gratitude. Maybe he just didn't know how to stop helping people, even if they were his enemies. They reached a maintenance shaft leading toward the shipyard decks, but a distant explosion rocked the floor. A fuel line had been hit. Flames licked up the corridor behind them. Reed swore under his breath and slammed the emergency lock. Fire suppression kicked in just barely. Varelia coughed, her eyes stinging. "There's no way forward," she gasped. "There's always a way," he said, scanning the pipes above them. He climbed swiftly, balancing across a narrow ledge, and began prying open a ceiling hatch with a rusted tool. Varelia watched from below, unsure if she could even follow. But he extended a hand, steady, unwavering. She took it. For a second, something passed between them. Not trust, not yet, but a crack in the wall she had built between their species. A tiny, flickering hope. They climbed together into a vent system that led them above the burning corridor. The noise faded behind them. The vent opened near a cargo bay where ships and weapons were stored, likely guarded by Merce now in charge of the fallen station. Reed motioned for her to stay back as he peeked around the corner. His face hardened. "They're waiting for us," he whispered. Varelia looked past him and saw a dozen mercenaries setting up position near a ship dock. Trapped. Outnumbered. No way around. And yet, Reed didn't look afraid. "Stay behind me," he said, voice low and calm. He picked up a length of steel piping, eyes narrowing, muscles tensing. Varelia didn't know what shocked her more, that he was ready to charge into death, or that she no longer wanted to run without him. The cold air inside the cargo bay felt thick, like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Varelia crouched low behind a pile of broken crates, her hands shaking as she watched Reed Carter move like a shadow. The human, with dirt smudged across his face and a broken pipe gripped tightly in his hand, showed no fear. He didn't blink as he scanned the group of mercenaries standing between them and the shipyard's exit. 12 men, armed with plasma rifles and armored gear, moved with military training, talking into headsets and watching every corridor. Varelia felt panic rising in her chest. This was impossible. She had always believed that survival belonged to those with control, with power, with politics. But here, in the ruins of a dying station, it was a man with no weapons, no status, and no backup who stood between her and death. Reed didn't wait for a perfect moment. He made one. He threw a shard of metal across the bay, shattering a glass panel on the far wall. The guards flinched and turned. In that split second of distraction, he ran straight at the stacked fuel canisters beside them. He slammed the pipe into the release valve, spraying high-pressure vapor into the air. Then he yanked a spark coil from a fallen drone and tossed it into the mist. The explosion rocked the room, sending flames and debris flying. Varelia ducked, covering her head, feeling the heat pass over her like a burning wave. Smoke poured in. Screams followed. Through the chaos, Reed grabbed her arm. "Move!" he shouted, pulling her to her feet. They ran, dodging, falling steel, passing unconscious mercenaries. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of burnt plastic. Sirens blared again. The emergency lights flickered red, then blue, then red again, casting strange shadows on the walls. They ducked into a maintenance tunnel just before reinforcements stormed in. The tunnel was dark and narrow, lined with pipes and old wiring. Reed moved fast, like he had walked these paths before. Varelia struggled to keep up, but she said nothing. She was starting to understand that silence was how he survived, not because he had nothing to say, but because he had seen too much to waste time talking. After a few turns, they stopped in a chamber filled with giant fans, each taller than a man. Reed climbed onto a panel and pried open a hatch above them. "We're going into the heat exhaust tunnel," he said. "If we time it wrong, we'll be fried. If we don't go, they'll find us." "Pick one." Varelia hesitated. She was trained in court arguments, not life-or-death choices. But then she looked at him bruised, tired, bleeding, and nodded. "Let's go." Inside the tunnel, the walls glowed faintly orange from heat. Every few seconds, a wave of hot air rushed through, nearly knocking them off balance. Reed timed the bursts, moving only when the gusts paused. Varelia followed, sweating, breath tight in her throat. Her luxurious life on Threxian homeworlds had never prepared her for crawling through steel ovens. But here she was, crawling behind a human she once thought of as a primitive. She didn't know what was stranger, that she trusted him now, or that he seemed to carry the weight of the universe on his shoulders like he had done it before. As they reached the far end of the tunnel, Reed pried open another hatch, and cold air rushed in. They dropped into a darkened control room, screens blinking with static. The room was empty, abandoned during the chaos. Reed tapped on a control panel, bringing up a flickering map of the station. "They've shut down half the exits," he muttered. "If we stay here, we're boxed in." He turned to her, face serious. "But there's an old cargo rail system below the main decks, used for moving freight. They don't monitor it anymore because it's half broken. That's our way out." The moment he said it, a deep hum filled the air, followed by a mechanical voice. "Attention, Zone C lockdown initiated. Please remain where you are." Reed looked at her grimly. "They know we're alive." With no time to lose, they climbed down through maintenance shafts until they reached the cargo rail platform. It was silent, full of dust and rusted equipment. A single rail car sat on the track, its power core flickering. Reed jumped in and began checking the systems. "Can you help?" he asked. Varelia stepped forward, hands trembling but willing. "I trained in tech diplomacy. I can reroute power signals." She found the control board and started reconnecting wires, while Reed loaded the manual guidance system. As they worked, boots echoed above them. Reinforcements were coming. "Faster," he said. Varelia nodded, sweat dripping from her forehead. Sparks flew, the core lit up, and the rail car whirred to life. They jumped inside as laser shots rang out behind them, slamming into the walls. Reed kicked the throttle, and the rail car shot forward into darkness. The ride was fast, bumpy, and loud. The rail tunnel twisted through the heart of Zerif 9, past storage zones, collapsed chambers, and broken droids. Varelia stared out the side window, watching the ruins of the station fly by. She had never seen anything like this. Her life had been clean, orderly, diplomatic. Now she saw what the galaxy looked like beneath the surface. Ugly. Dangerous. Real. Reed sat opposite her, gripping the controls, jaw clenched. "You've done this before," she said. He nodded. "Escaped once from a mining facility, when they tried to sell me to the black markets. Humans don't get trials. We disappear." There was bitterness in his voice, but no self-pity. Varelia felt shame curl in her stomach. Her people had spoken of humans like they were pests. Yet here was one risking his life to save her without asking for anything in return. Suddenly, the railcar jerked. Lights ahead blinked red. "Track failure," Reed said, standing up. "We have to jump before it derails." Before she could argue, he opened the side hatch. Wind rushed in. The platform ahead was small, barely big enough to land on. Reed counted down. 3, 2, 1, jump. He leapt. She followed. They hit the platform hard, rolling across metal grates. The railcar continued without them, crashing into a wall in a burst of sparks. Breathless, they looked around. They had landed in a loading bay, empty except for a few old storage crates and a broken utility shuttle in the corner. Reed limped toward it and began checking the engines. "If we can get this working, we're gone," he said. Varelia joined him, her fingers working faster now, no longer soft or unsure. Together, they powered up the shuttle systems, ignoring the sound of guards approaching from above. The engines hummed. The lights flickered on. Varelia looked at Reed, and for the first time, she didn't see a savage, she saw a survivor. As the shuttle lifted off, shaking dust from the floor, Reed turned to her with a small, tired smile. "We're not safe yet. They'll chase us." She looked out the window as the ship moved toward the exit tunnel, stars waiting beyond. "Then we don't stop," she said. "Not until we're free." And somewhere behind them, deep in the station's hollow steel, alarms kept ringing, but no one could stop what had already begun. The stars outside the shuttle moved slowly, as if space itself was holding its breath, but inside the stolen craft, there was no peace. Reed Carter sat hunched over the navigation console, wiping blood from his arm where a shard of metal had cut him during their escape. Beside him, Varelia Salcor worked silently, her fingers moving quickly across the interface. Her dress, once clean and smooth, was now torn and covered in soot. Her hair stuck to her face, and the shimmering glow of her skin had dulled under exhaustion, but her focus remained sharp. The shuttle systems were old, barely holding together, and the map screen kept flickering with warning signals. Fuel low. Hull integrity compromised. Enemy signal detected. None of it was good, but they couldn't stop now. Behind them, Xerif 9 was burning, and the Threxian Union would not forget what had just happened. Varelia knew this. Her people would never let their diplomat's daughter vanish without sending death squads to hunt her down, and once they discovered she was not alone, that a human helped her escape, it would only get worse. Reed knew it too, but he showed no fear, just quiet urgency. He moved through the cramped shuttle, checking wires, realigning the core, and pushing the failing ship forward while Varelia tried to crack into the Union's navigation network to find a safe route out of controlled space. They had no allies, no clean IDs, and no refueling codes, which meant they had to go dark, fly through dead zones, and avoid every known patrol. "This system here," she said, pointing to a faded map, "it's abandoned. Mining colony collapsed years ago. No one should be there." Reed glanced at it. "Perfect. If we're lucky, we can patch the hull and reroute power. If we're not lucky, we crash and burn." He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. They set course for the broken planet. Flying under false codes, Varelia managed to stitch together from ancient diplomatic credentials. It wouldn't fool anyone for long, but it might buy them a few hours. As the stars drifted past and the noise of the engine buzzed in the background, silence filled the space between them. Varelia finally spoke. "Back there. Why did you help me?" Reed looked at her, his hands tightening on the control. "Because you were in a cage, same as me." She frowned. "But I was part of the Union." "Your enemy." He shook his head. "Not my enemy. Just someone caught in the wrong place. I don't care about your flag. I care about what people do when they have power. Your people lock mine in cages, work them to death, then call us savages when we fight back." His voice was quiet but steady, like a blade slowly pulled from its sheath. The ship jolted as they entered the ruined atmosphere of the abandoned planet. The clouds were thick with dust, and the sky was the color of rust. Below them, the ground was cracked and scorched, with broken towers sticking out like bones from a dead world. The shuttle landed roughly on a metal platform near the remains of an old mining complex. They stepped out into silence. No birds, no wind, just the faint hum of machines long dead. "Let's find cover," Reed said. They moved quickly through the rubble, finding an old control center buried under debris. Inside, the systems were offline, but the walls were thick, and there was still some power left in the backup cells. Reed got to work, trying to seal the doors and hide their signal. Varelia accessed an old terminal, hoping to find something useful. What she found instead shocked her. Deep in the mining colony's old memory banks, hidden behind broken code and corrupted files, was a record of the operation that destroyed the site. It wasn't an accident. The Threxian Union had wiped it out. Not because of structural failure, but because the humans working there had discovered something buried beneath the surface, a kind of ancient tech that the Union wanted hidden. "They silenced everyone," Varelia whispered, reading the old messages. "They bombed the site after disabling the comms. They killed them all." Reed came up behind her, silent as always, but his jaw was clenched. It's not the first time, and it won't be the last. Then the terminal flickered. A strange symbol appeared on the screen. It wasn't Threxian, and it wasn't human. It pulsed slowly, almost like it was alive. Then lines of alien code filled the screen. Varelia reached out, unsure. Reed grabbed her wrist. Careful. That's not Union code. It's a message, she said. Not meant for them. Maybe for whoever found it before they were killed. They tried to decrypt it. Reed didn't understand the language, but Varelia could piece together parts of it. Coordinates. Warnings. Something about a gate. A machine that could open paths through space that shouldn't exist. This might be why the colony was erased, she said. If they found this. It's more dangerous than just rebellion. Reed leaned back. If that's true, then we're not just running anymore. We're carrying something they'd kill to bury. At that moment, a faint sound echoed through the building, boots crunching on broken glass. Varelia froze. Reed moved to the shadows. A red scanner beam swept through the hall. The Threxians had found them. One of the patrols must have picked up their trail through the broken atmosphere. They were fast. Too fast. Reed whispered, "We can't fight them head-on. Too many." Varelia nodded. Her heart was pounding, but her mind was racing. "I can overload the backup cell. Make it explode. It'll trigger a pulse and knock out their scanners. Maybe buy us minutes." Reed looked at her, a mix of respect and concern. "You sure?" "No," she said, "but it's better than dying quiet." She set the overload while Reed prepared a second exit through the collapsed floor. The building shook as the cell went critical. The pulse blasted out, frying sensors and blinding the patrol's HUDs. Reed grabbed Varelia, and they dropped through the floor into the tunnels below. The air was thick with dust and darkness, but they kept moving. They didn't stop until they were far from the blast site. Above them, the Threxians searched in confusion. For now, they were ghosts. Safe for a little while. In the silence of the tunnel, Reed finally spoke. "That code back there. If it's real, it could change everything." Varelia nodded. "Or destroy everything. But either way, we can't let them control it." They looked at each other. Two fugitives from different worlds. Running. Hunted. But now, holding a secret bigger than either of them had imagined. Blood had been spilled for it, and code had kept it alive. And somewhere, deep in the void between stars, something ancient had started to wake. Dust still clung to their clothes as Reed and Varelia emerged from the underground tunnel, their bodies sore. The night sky above the ruined mining colony stretched wide and empty, but they both knew eyes were watching, ships searching, and time slipping away. They had escaped the patrol for now, but not the truth they carried. The code they had recovered wasn't just old data, it was a forgotten map, a design for a gateway hidden somewhere in uncharted space, created by something not Threxian and not human. It pointed to a place older than their civilizations, a place erased from official records but preserved in broken machines and dying colonies. Varelia had translated enough to understand that it was not just a location, it was a test, a doorway between galaxies, possibly between dimensions. And somehow, humanity had been close to unlocking it long ago before the Threxian Union crushed their progress, burned their records, and scattered the survivors like ashes. Now the secret was in her hands, and she was no longer sure which side she belonged to. Her people had hidden the truth, but Reed's people had bled for it, and Reed himself was ready to fight for it again. He wasn't a soldier, not by title, but every decision he made was a move in a quiet war he never stopped fighting. That was humanity's gambit, not brute force, not politics, but survival through grit, stubbornness, and unpredictable courage. They found shelter in the hollow remains of a crashed survey vessel buried half in the dirt. Reed patched the communication dish with parts salvaged from their wrecked shuttle. It wasn't powerful, but it could send a short-range signal. He didn't want to call for help. He wanted to call for proof. "There's a human colony off-grid," he told Varelia while working. "Old friends of mine. Engineers. Coders. Survivors. If anyone can verify this code and track the real location, it's them. Virelia hesitated. Won't that make us easier to find? Reed nodded. Yeah. But it's a gamble we have to take. She looked at him, truly looked this time not as a fugitive or a rescuer, but as a strategist, someone who had learned to make desperate choices in impossible situations. In the end, she said, then we send it, but only to them. No one else. The message was short, encrypted, and sent through a blind relay. Now, they waited. Hours passed with no response. They sat near the broken window, watching stars flicker. Virelia spoke softly, not to distract, but to share. I was trained to see humans as chaotic, unruly, dangerous. I never expected this. Reed glanced at her. Expected what? That the chaos might be what keeps you alive. That unpredictability might be your strength. Before he could respond, the dish beeped. A return signal. Coordinates. A voice. Reed? You crazy bastard, is that you? This code you sent, it's real. We cross-checked it with old pre-war archives. It's a gate. Or part of one. Not built by us, but someone or something else. If the Threxians were hiding this, it's bigger than we thought. Reed's grip tightened on the panel. Can you track the full location? We already did, the voice replied. But listen, once we pinged the location, satellites woke up. Somebody's watching it. You don't have much time. The line went dead. Virelia pulled the data into her pad, eyes scanning fast. It's in the Helios Drift. No patrols go there. It's unstable. Full of anomalies. We'll need a ship that can survive the pull. Reed stood, already thinking ahead. I know a port. Black market, no questions asked. If we can get there, we can steal something fast enough to get us through the drift. And after that? She asked. Then, he said, we see what they didn't want us to find. The journey to the black market port was harsh. They hijacked a cargo hauler using old smuggler routes to bypass the Union sensors. Reed flew low, dodging meteors and debris fields, while Virelia masked their signal with ghost frequencies. The tension never faded. At every checkpoint, they feared exposure. Every blink of light in the distance might have been a patrol ship. They changed IDs, wore old disguises, and spoke in code. The closer they got to the Helios Drift, the more Reed noticed a change in Virelia. She no longer hesitated, no longer clung to her upbringing. She asked the right questions, made the right calls, and trusted him like she had known him for years. For Reed, it was strange. Trust was a rare thing in the world he came from. But here she was, once a diplomat's daughter, now acting like a resistance fighter. At the port, they found the ship they needed fast, silent, shielded against space anomalies. Reed used favors and threats to steal it, while Virelia uploaded a fake departure schedule into the port's mainframe. The moment they launched, alarms rang. They hit the drift within minutes, chased by 2 Union interceptors. The Helios Drift was a graveyard of lost ships and folded stars, a place where physics bent and time didn't always move forward. The stolen ship shook violently. As they entered, Reed gritted his teeth, holding the controls steady. Hold together, you old beast, he muttered. Behind them, one of the Union ships exploded after hitting a gravitational spike. The second turned back, unwilling to follow. Inside the drift, space was warped. Light moved strangely. Shapes flickered in the distance, structures or ruins. It was hard to tell. Then, the signal activated. The code from the mining colony lit up again, syncing with something ahead. Virelia pointed. There. Ahead of them, half hidden in cosmic fog, was a ring the size of a city, an ancient structure, floating quietly in the void. Lights pulsed along its edge, awakening. They approached slowly. Scans failed. Communications buzzed with static. But as they came closer, the ship's controls responded without input. Reed's hands hovered over the wheel. It's flying itself. Virelia stared at the ring. No. It's recognizing us. Or at least the code. The gate began to rotate, revealing a vortex inside blue and gold, swirling like a storm made of stars. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Varelia whispered, "This is it." What the Union feared. Reed's voice was calm but steady. This is what they tried to bury. A gate to somewhere else. Maybe even answers. Then a signal broke through. Not from the Union. From the other side. A voice. Human. Weak. "This is Colony Outpost Sigma Year. Unknown if anyone hears this. We are not alone." Reed looked at Varelia, eyes wide. A human signal. From the other side of the gate. She stared at the vortex. It means others made it through. Maybe decades ago. Maybe centuries. And if they did, Reed finished her thought. Then we're not just uncovering history. We're stepping into it. The ship floated before the gate, humming with energy. Behind them, the galaxy hunted them. Ahead, the unknown waited. And this was humanity's gambit. The swirling gate shimmered like a wound in space, its edges pulsing with quiet energy as Reed and Varelia stared into it. Not as enemies, not as fugitives, but as two pieces of a story that had grown bigger than either of them could have imagined. Behind them lay a galaxy full of betrayal, war, and silence, but before them stretched a path no human or Threxian had passed through in generations, if ever returned. Reed gripped the ship's controls while Varelia watched the navigation system, which now operated without input, guided by an ancient signal still locked inside the alien code. Then, without warning, the ship surged forward, drawn into the vortex, and for a moment, everything was light and motion, then darkness, then silence, then the sky of violet, and gold spread out above them, unfamiliar and strange. The ship stabilized in orbit around a world unlike any they'd seen, green with impossible forests, oceans that glowed faintly under two suns, and spires of crystal rising from the ground like the bones of some ancient creature. But what caught Reed's eye was the signal still pulsing from the planet below Still Human. They landed the ship near the signal source, which came from what looked like a dome-shaped structure half buried in vines. As they stepped out, the air felt thin but breathable, the gravity slightly lighter, and the sound's soft melodic hum seemed to echo from nowhere. They moved carefully, weapons drawn, though neither hoped to use them. The doors to the structure opened at their approach, and lights flickered on one by one, as if the place had been waiting. Inside, the hallways were built with a mix of human tech and something older, alien in shape but strangely welcoming. At the heart of the dome, they found a chamber filled with consoles and stasis pods. And in one of them was a man. Pale. Still alive. Human. A soft hiss escaped the pod as it began to unlock, and Reed and Varelia stepped back, uncertain. The man opened his eyes slowly, blinking in confusion, his voice hoarse as he whispered, "Where? How long?" Reed stepped forward. "You sent a signal. We followed it." The man looked at him, and something like recognition flashed across his face. "You're from Earth?" "I am," Reed said. "But I don't think Earth is the same anymore." The man, whose name was Elias Grant, had been part of a deep space colonization mission almost a century ago, one lost when the Union destroyed the old records. His team had discovered the gate, passed through, and tried to build a new home here. But things went wrong. The planet had defenses, not hostile, but reactive, and when the systems misread human energy signatures, it triggered a stasis lockdown. Most of the crew had been sealed away before they could escape, and Elias had been alone ever since, kept half awake by the ancient tech, hoping someone would come. Reed listened quietly as Elias explained that the planet wasn't just a new world, it was part of a network left behind by an ancient race not seen in millennia. And the gate? It wasn't just transportation. It was a test. A way to find species ready to grow, to lead, to protect. He reasoned the Union buried the project was because they failed the test. But now, with new players involved, someone unexpected, it might change everything. Varelia stepped forward. "Why us? Why now?" Elias smiled weakly. "Because the system reads choices. Sacrifice. loyalty, courage. And the code you used to activate the gate wasn't from the Union. It was patched with human decisions. Your actions told the system to open. It chose you. Reed looked down at his hands, scarred and callous, hands that had broken chains and fired stolen weapons, hands that had carried people through fire. "I'm no hero," he said. Elias looked at him, truly looked, and said, "That's exactly why you are." The planet's systems began activating around them. Lights glowed across the horizon. Satellites that had slept for centuries woke and spun into orbit. The gate behind them pulsed stronger, and new coordinates flickered across the console. More gates. More worlds. And with that came a choice: stay here, unlock the network, and maybe bring change to the galaxy or run. Varelia stood beside Reed, her hand brushing the console. "If we don't do this, the Union will come, and they'll destroy it all over again." Reed nodded. "Then we don't let them." For the first time in years, Reed felt something strange, not just purpose, but hope. Not for revenge. Not for survival. But for change. They began restoring the network, one system at a time. Elias helped, his knowledge old but useful. Varelia, once a daughter of power, now acted as a bridge between two species. She sent hidden messages back to those still loyal to peace. And Reed, the man who once fought only to live another day, now became the key to something bigger. Across the stars, whispers began of a gate reopening, of a new alliance forming, of a human who passed the test not by command, but by compassion. The Union sent ships, but the gate no longer obeyed their codes. It rejected them, locked them out. Inside the gate world, Reed led missions to recover the lost, to awaken other stasis pods, to light up the dark corners of a forgotten empire. Varelia stood by him, her people beginning to question everything they thought they knew. One day, as they watched the sun rise over the crystal spires, Varelia said softly, "When I first met you, I thought you were a savage." Reed laughed. "I thought you were a spoiled alien princess." She smiled. "And now, he said, looking toward the stars, "we're building something they never saw coming." The hero they didn't expect wasn't a soldier or a chosen one. He was just a man who chose to act when others stayed silent. A man who broke his own chains and then reached back to break others. A man who didn't need a title to lead. And somewhere in the vast silence of space, the ancient system that had once watched quietly now hummed with new life, ready to respond to those who proved, through actions and not bloodlines, that they were ready. Ready not just to explore the stars, but to protect them. Reed Carter, the human no one believed in, had become more than a survivor. He had become the signal others would follow. The hero no one expected was exactly the one they needed.